Okay, whoa, gotta adjust my microphone a little bit and I'll get my headphones on. I'm still sharing the links out to this. I can't hear myself. Now I can hear myself. Okay, and I want to put that one on. Okay, welcome friends to the Bill Huston podcast. We have a kind of a bit of some somber business to take care of here, but it seems to be necessary. There's a lot of people calling for it and asking for it, and I am joined by. Oops, hang on. I am joined by Diane Hunter. Are you on the line?
Hi, Bill.
Okay, I can hear you loud and clear. Let me hear you talk. Go ahead and speak one more time. Oh, I got to do one more thing. Okay, so let me hear you speak one more time.
Good evening, folks. How are you?
Okay, so I'm still... Okay, for some reason I'm getting bleed through. I'm not sure. I hope this sounds okay. If anybody is watching and if you have a problem with the sound, please say something in the chat and I will try to get it corrected. It looks like we do have a couple of people watching right now. Give a thumbs up if you can, if you are watching. Okay, so Diane, let's break the story down like a little bit at a time, okay? It's like let's just try to explain to people, let's orient people. I want to try to keep this thing moving, but I want to orient people to understand what's really going on here. So first of all, can we describe where do we begin the story? So can we describe so do you want to just start talking about what happened last night, or you want to? I mean, give me a context of what's happened over the last year in the village of Endicott. Let's just start with that in very general terms.
Okay, well, I think it's important to start it out by saying that we're talking about the election held in November of 2019, and that at that time I was running for a trustee position in Endicott, and Linda Jackson was running for mayor. She was running alongside Ted Warner for the same trustee spot that I was. Ted was running, and Ted eventually did win. There were other candidates that were running at the time, and actually I had many conversations at the time regarding whether or not Linda was qualified. I had a lot of concerns regarding that, but unfortunately my concerns were quashed by this, agreement that was made, this kind of silence agreement that was made between Cheryl Chapman and Linda Jackson at the time. They agreed that they wouldn't talk badly about each other. So the information I had regarding Linda potentially being a slumlord and some harassing type of things in court with some of her disabled tenants was kind of squashed by the fact that the Dems were like, well, they have this agreement and we're going to honor that agreement. So anyway, she was elected, much to all of our chagrin.
Diane?
Did not expect that.
Dan, I want to, if we can. So, okay, so she was elected. So she got elected. Okay, so I think we got that established. But so over the past year, what has been the main issue that people have been talking about in Endicott, and how would you say the people have? What's the issue? And then if you want to go into how has the mayor really responded to this issue? Just give me some in broad terms, like some of the dynamic that's gone on the last year.
Well, I mean, the main issue that everybody has had on their lips has been the fight against this incinerator project. Within weeks of her taking office, this was like her key issue. And this was something that she was apparently completely 100% behind. And immediately upon me hearing about it, even though people like yourself that apparently were more tuned in than me even at the time already knew about it, I was like, what the heck is this about? Because I don't want to have an incinerator in my backyard. I certainly didn't want it in people's yards near, kids' baseball fields and what have you. So we started voicing our concerns to Mayor Jackson. And honestly, she just never really seemed to take them seriously. She just seemed to trivialize every concern we had in the name of economic development. And meeting after meeting, regardless of our concerns being raised, she was pushing this project along, really from a really early point, saying it was a done deal, that it was already a solid situation. So, of course, along with different community groups, we started speaking out and protesting. As a matter of fact, my family, my partner, my daughter, and I actually went down to the municipal building on a couple of days and protested there along with a few other folks. And actually one night in May, actually I was there with you, Bill, when they actually voted on the recycling law. But I mean, the main concern was just her behavior. I think the way that she disregarded people's concerns. There weren't any people coming out strongly in support of this project other than her and Cheryl Chapman. They didn't have any company. Obviously, Stephen Donnelly was marketing the company, and they seemed to have a very solid plan to come in, and there were signs that they were coming in, and we took that very seriously. But she just poo-pooed our concerns right along and was very jovial about it. Like, nope, I'm sorry, we got this plan in place, and everything's solid. They're coming, and that really, really concerned us.
Right, and the thing that I thought was really odd was, I had my own personal interactions with her and Cheryl Chapman. Cheryl Chapman was voted off the board in the last election, but they, in the early part of 2020, when I was basically the first one that was really, trying to bring people's attention to this. I had meetings with the both of them, and they were all I had their ear, and they were acting all concerned. And then something happened around between the end of February and I would say mid-March. I think the mayor kind of disappeared around the month of March when the pandemic really kind of hit and we were all getting locked down. And after that, they came back. Cheryl Chapman and Linda both were all for this incinerator, they called it a battery recycling facility, but of course we know that's really not what it was. It was more of an incinerator than a recycling facility because it didn't produce products that go immediately back into the production chain. It was an intermediate, like metal smelter. It was like a metal refining operation, but it was an intermediate refining thing. So I guess, all right, so SMCC wanted to come here and set up this incinerator, and the people really didn't want it. And Linda, the mayor, she flipped. And then once she did flip, she was completely, would you say it's a fair characterization that she really had tuned out the public and even made it very difficult for the public to be able to speak at public hearings, to be able to, she was very dismissive and antagonistic and mischaracterized the opposition. And for me, I just want to put on the record my own complaints were I just wanted to make sure that they followed the seeker process. We have laws in the state of New York, a pretty good environmental law. I was just trying to make sure that the DEC, part of the government, follows the law. I'm not anti-business, and I'm not even potentially anti-incinerator as long as they follow the process correctly. Show me, prove to me that this is a clean technology. They couldn't do that.
Right. And, we did everything. I mean, we were picketing, we were talking, we were going meetings. I called Linda personally. I had a private conversation with her. Many people contacted her, and I believe at one point, one of the first big concerning things that I heard was that she was blocking people's access to communicate with her, either through the village email or something like that. I was like, well, that sounds pretty unethical. But it was really, really hard. Basically, there was a requirement all of a sudden that in order to speak with the public hearing, you needed to register a week before in order to do that. And of course, some of us don't know the week before what our schedule is, and we have busy lives, and not everybody had that opportunity to do that or remembered that. And so then when it came time for the public hearing, then, if you weren't signed up, you didn't get to speak. And so there were a lot of meetings. This was like a whole year of a process of even the town of Union getting involved, town of Union showing, some, I would say, minor concern. Mostly they, seem to, again, not wanting to appear non-business, wanted to make sure that these concerns were addressed. Other people spoke out, like Terry Farrell. Terry Farrell was running for county legislator, and she has a background in environmental studies, and there were other people in the community. Of course, we had scientists that were saying that this was highly unsafe, Dr. Paul Connett and what have you, and nothing seemed to penetrate this veneer. Now, there was this conversation about some meeting happening with Linda Jackson and these officials. Now, I have requested hundreds of pages of information via FOIA from the village, which I just recently got. I'm not even through it all yet. But there were several meetings that were held behind a kind of closed door situation. And there was an allegation that at one point Linda had gone to one of these meetings and been seen pretty upset after this meeting. I still, to this day, don't know who was at that meeting. I don't know. Did you notice anything about that in any of your paperwork, Bill?
Well, yes, we actually do have the exact roster of that meeting. I think you were talking about. So there was 2 meetings. I can't easily call that up, but I do have the complete roster. We know who was at. But there was a meeting at one was at Donna Lupardo's office at the end of February. I think February 28th. Where she was, she basically sent out an email that says, we got to. This was after Linda Jackson was on, and Cheryl Chapman were both on the news saying, "Hey, we have real serious concerns about this facility." Donna Lupardo sent out an email that said, "Hey, we all got to get on the same page." And they had a meeting at the end of February at Donna Lupardo's office, and I don't have the roster, but it was like Empire State Development. It was people from Fred Akshar's office. It was all these bigwigs from the DEC and from Sunjeel. There was no representatives of the public at that meeting, of any citizen group, that was opposing this facility. We were locked out, but it was very exclusive meeting, very private, with a bunch of bigwigs, the government officials, and Empire State Development, which had the purse strings for this thing. And after, I think it was at that meeting that I had heard that Linda had left crying. I think, is that what you had heard too?
Yes, I heard that, but I obviously this is like third, fourth party accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But right. No, I mean, I don't doubt it because, when I ran for office, there was quite a lot of strong arming, even of me, that was going on in regards to my activism over at the Boys and Girls Club and, dealing with that closure. And I really did not like the kind of disrespect I was getting. So I don't doubt that a lot of pressure was applied. I think that I have not personally seen minutes yet from my FOIA request about that meeting and what was discussed. But the point being is, like, after that meeting from February on, she was really pushing this project down everybody's throat. And residents were really, really concerned. Now, I personally was pretty upset, knowing the location, seeing the proximity to the houses. Obviously, everybody usually thinks of themselves first. I mean, I personally was concerned about my health, very concerned about my daughter's health. We had some exposure to the plume living on 49 McKinley, and I was very concerned about the possibility of needing to move out of an area that could be, poisoned by such a thing. So I immediately, got my daughter kind of on the alert and my partner on the alert, and just said that we cannot stay here if this happens. And I'm sure a lot of other families were thinking the same thing. And we were meeting, and once the summer hit, despite the pandemic, we were meeting in droves. I mean, it was quite amazing how much the public came out. But none of these public appearances, none of these marches, none of these protests, anything swayed her. She was just like, this is what we're doing. They're coming. And it caused just, I'd say, a real fear through the whole summer and fall about what was going to happen. Now, at one point, a strategic group of us decided, okay, Sunjeel wants to open up their doors. Let's go and say hi. So we went to their offices. It kind of seems like so many months ago, doesn't it, Bill? It seems like it was like a couple of years ago now in my head. But we showed up at their office and said, hey, if you'd like to take something on the door, and it's very welcoming. It's like, oh, if you want to see us, this is what you need to do. And so we did that, and oh boy, it was very, very clear that they wanted nobody on their property. Immediately, we had I would say kind of a fire truck-like vehicle pull up, a honk on their horn. We had security vehicles. It was very, very clear that no, this was not a welcome thing to show up at this office that was apparently being opened by Sunjeel MMC and say, hey, we have some questions. We'd like to talk to somebody here. And the police showed up. Actually, they were kind of, they seemed to be concerned themselves at the time. I said, hey, we're concerned. We're residents. We were told, hey, they are willing to answer any questions we have. So we showed up today with questions. And
right.
They're like, well, you've got to, there's a process that you've got to follow. And
it was just, it was way over the response. I thought was way excessive and over the top. It was extreme. But the Endicott police were very
really clear view, like in the summertime, of what we were willing to do. These few people showing up at the door. Was it Chris? The one that's in charge of here on campus.
Chris Pelto.
Yeah, Chris Pelto showed up. His face looked very concerned to me about, oh boy, what's this going to be the start of?
Right.
And I'm sure that report went immediately to Sunjeel and Stephen Donnelly advertising. It's like, okay, we got people starting to show up at the office.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at that point, all of us really saw Sunjeel start a really heavy marketing effort, and Stephen Donnelly advertising showed up at the Town of Union meeting along with, I think Chris was there. Linda Jackson showed up. And there was a lot of pressure, even on the Town of Union, not to discourage this project. The DEC had initially issued a permit, and that was frustrating because it seems like it was issued awful quickly for, the first of its kind recycling plant here in Endicott,
right.
in America, I should say. And we really, I personally did not address the DEC, but I saw a lot of correspondence in this packet that I just got in the last, I'd say I got about 7 days ago. A lot of letters to the DEC about concerns. And eventually, I think, when was it, midsummer, Bill, that they revoked the permit, or beginning of fall?
Well, it was at the end of June. So No Burn Broom kept raising this issue with this one particular chemical, this pollutant of concern called PFAS, P-F-A-S, polyfluoroalkyl substances, I think is what it stands for. And and so when they did that, and apparently the New York Attorney General has concerns about PFAS as well, because there was the big PFAS contamination in Cohoes, New York, where they had an incinerator up there that had a PFAS issue. I think PFAS was also the chemical that was involved in the contamination in I'm not remembering now, but it was a very famous case in up near the Adirondacks. I think there was an incidence of water contamination with this chemical. So it's a very serious concern to the state of New York. And when they learned that PFAS possibly could be emitted by this thing, the DEC asked Sunjeel to provide two things. They didn't. This is something that's widely misunderstood, in my opinion. They didn't really rescind the permit, and I thought this at first too until I really dug into it. What the DEC said was, you got to do one of two things. Either you have to certify to us that none of the incinerators you're going to be burning are going to contain this material. And so you're going to have to work it out with the manufacturers. And the other thing is, if you can't certify that these batteries are free from PFAS, then you have to do some. You have to modify your process in order to destroy. I love the way they use the word destroy. Like, wait a minute. When I studied science in elementary school, they talked about the conservation of matter. So I don't know how you can actually destroy PFAS. You can convert it from one thing into a different thing that's hopefully maybe less toxic. But anyway, so that's where they left it was. And apparently Sunjeel, I did a foil with the DEC, and it came back, and it seemed like that Sunjeel felt like they couldn't certify that that the source material going into the front end of the incinerator was PFAS free. So then they were taking some samples over in Korea. Not a lot had gone on in the record. I mean, I haven't been through it. You're talking about FOIL requests. I've got FOIL requests that I haven't completely been through all of them yet. So I'm not sure what this all says. This DEC one. I just got it a couple of weeks ago. But yeah. Does that
FOIL requests don't come organized? You've got to put them together. You've got to put them together in order. You got to put them together by group that requested information. It's a lot of individuals requesting information from New York, from Broome County, from the village of Endicott. It's a lot of papers to go through, and I haven't finished. And you and I should meet and talk again, hopefully online when we do that. But the main point of this is that her constituents were speaking, and that's one thing when I was running for a trustee that I took really, really seriously is you have a constituency. You have, all these hundreds of families that are located around where this incinerator was going to be. And to have a mayor that was elected to listen to her constituents, just completely disregard all of their concerns, really just blew me away. I felt, and I still feel more so today than ever, is that she really needed an ego stroke, and she ran with this, narcissistic need to win. I don't really feel that she really cares about Endicott. And I heard, over the course of the time that, well, I'm not running again, so it's not going to affect me, and I'm going south. So this really became clear that she really did not care to listen to everybody. And so we needed to do everything we could. And, I was not even part of the group that ended up hiring an attorney. I don't know if you were part of that, Bill, but I know that I called Claudia Bramer as soon as I started talking, hearing her name come up, and I'm like, wait, who is this person? I got to call her. And she referred me to Rob Taberry, and I contacted Rob at that time, and Rob did not call me back. I felt helpless. I felt like, gosh, this thing is going to come to us. And we were talking about, direct action means, and I was just really concerned that I was going to be put in a position where I'm going to be like trying to block this entrance, because that's how far I was willing to take it to protect myself, my daughter, and the residents of Endicott. it really became a real concern that this was just going to all of a sudden, we were going to hear one day that this was starting the next day or starting that day, and we were going to have very little notice. From the way that she gave us the impression, and I feel that just like all these backdoors deals were made, I feel that there were a lot of lies, perpetrated. I feel that the constituents really felt betrayed by her. People that voted for her said that they were so embarrassed that they had voted for her. And this momentum grew and grew and grew.
And it went on for months all through, right. Even during the lockdowns and the pandemics, we were having record civic participation. Everybody, even Ted Warner was saying it.
Absolutely. There were, honestly, I wasn't at every single meeting. You probably made probably the best effort at being every single meeting. I think you pretty much recorded every single meeting. But everybody has their lives going on. You only have so much time and energy to put into this. The pandemic thing really, was a lot of, fear mongering to the point where sometimes you felt like, gosh, should I go out today? And you're trying to work and support your family, and you're trying to figure out whether or not you should be at work, whether or not you should be out, at these places that are being shut down, closed down, you're warned about. All this is going on in the middle of what, has been in our lives, this pandemic that, has been really shoved down our throats so much that, even the sanest person has to question some of the things coming out of it. But that being said, it really was feeling like here your hands are tied with the pandemic, but you're expected to speak out and fight this incinerator project when you can't even go to a meeting. You can't even present yourself to a meeting. That's why at the time when the town of Union said, hey, we're concerned about this, we're going to have a meeting and people can come. Let's see, gosh, Bill and I were there. And like I said, the mayor was there. Stephen Donnelly came. There was I think about 20 people that came from the public to that meeting because it was finally a door was opened and a place was available to go in.
Somebody will listen to us. Thank God, somebody.
Right. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of Rick Matarese, but I do give the town of Union some kudos in opening up their doors.
Major kudos. Come on, major.
Right. I'm going to allow you folks to be heard. I'm going to allow you to come down here. And we're very concerned that the constituents of Endicott are not being heard. So we're going to allow you to come down here and be heard. So, there's always some talk here, and it's just recently opened up the doors again, this things that have happened more recently, to conversation about the town of Union absorbing the village. And trust me, I've given that a lot of heartfelt thought and consideration. Now, I haven't gone to that degree yet because I see hope. And when we had this election prep for the fall, we had some great, candidates come up in this, honestly, in my mind, a news star, Nick Burlingame, come up and say, hey, we are not happy with this either. We are constituents. We have homes here, and we don't want this thing either. And not only that, but we're willing to come out against it. Pat Dorner, Ted Warner. I couldn't be more happy that I lost against Ted Warner. Ted Warner has done a fabulous job.
Yep.
Speaking my concerns and always answering and talking to me. And these three guys spearheaded this movement that it was we are not happy with this. We're not going to put up with this. We do not want Cheryl Chapman in here anymore. We are going to turn this thing around and listen to people and change this. And when the election was held, it was very clear what the constituents wanted and what they didn't want. And regardless of the fact that Cheryl Chapman was voted out and Nick was voted in, Linda kept up this rhetoric that this is done because we passed this law that says that this can be done now, and I know this company is coming. And the amount of fear that she built in our hearts and minds for months is just, in my eyes, unforgivable. It took every ounce of me, not to go and do more drastic protesting, let's say that, because I really felt like my health was going to be in jeopardy. 110% of me felt like this was going to be really, really bad. I have a very sensitive thyroid, and I read everything I read about PFAS and the amount of time that they stay in the soil and could perpetrate into the drinking water. I was scared, and I think a lot of people were scared.
A lot of people. Property values.
A lot of people were going to move if this happened. They had plans that they were up and leaving. They were not going to stick around.
And these are old time EJ families, IBMers. These are long time Endicott residents.
Yes, and like we just talked about it, like I said, the most recent meeting is it really brought us together in a really unique way during this pandemic, where we probably wouldn't have been speaking. Mm-hmm. I think you and I became closer friends, and certainly like Terry Farrell, and I feel like normally is your typical Dem. I probably wouldn't be communicating that much with the other side of the fence, but on this, we really all needed to pull together. It wasn't a party line thing. I remember that's one of the things that really struck out to me about the protests is that I went there and there were all kinds of Republicans and Democrats all together protesting the same thing.
Right. Yeah. It was really a truly amazing and beautiful thing. I mean, it was like I said at the meeting the other night, I've done all kinds of campaigns, environmental campaigns, and it's a campaign happens when some new toxic threat comes to town. So, I can remember when Jim Little and Mark Bacon came up to me. I think it was 2013 or something like that. Could it have been that early? It was when there was this Polish filmmaker that came to town, and he had this film about fracking. His name was Lech Walewski, I think. Lech Walewski. And they told me about this leachate spill. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? They were like, leachate, this big tank just dumped all his leachate. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, go away. I can't even, I'm too busy with fighting fracking. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't even listen to it. So just leave me alone with your leachate. So eventually I started paying more attention to them and watching their videos and learning more about what was going on. Basically, here on campus, created a brand new business. They didn't go, it was the exact same thing here with the zoning issue. It was a brand new business. It was basically a chemical waste treatment operation. That's not, there's nothing in the zoning about chemical dumping, a chemical dumping business. They just went off and did it. It was Chris Pelto and what's the other, Jay Simonis. Like it was a team effort because it's like the property is Huron and then the facility was I3. So anyway, but during that campaign, Diane, it's like the few of us that were working on it, really, it was Jim Little, Mark Bacon, and me. It was 3 people, and we couldn't get the attention of the local electeds, and I'm not going to name names, but there's a lot of the same people involved. You can imagine who I'm talking about. And Donna
Lopardo was really, really slow in coming along and really listening to our concerns. And, I started being encouraged when I started seeing things come from the Union Endicott School District. And I believe that even Fred Akshar's letter came before Donna's. But it doesn't really matter.
It absolutely did. It absolutely did. Fred Akshar, and I have my issues with him, man, or I have in the past. He was way out in front on this one. So God bless Fred Akshar for that powerful letter. And people would say, oh, it's just a letter. It doesn't mean anything. But I'm like, you don't understand how politics works. That is a huge thing. When you get an elected official that represents, what's the size of his district? 100,000 people, something like that? It's a lot of people.
Well, just the fact that he was willing to put his concern and say, I'm concerned that my constituents are complaining to me. I'm very concerned about, the after effects of this. And even though, I have to say, people that signed on to that letter, such as Matthew Pasquale, I had reached out to Matthew Pasquale, our county legislator, and I was like, someone said to me, well, his number is bad because he works full time. And I said, well, I'm sorry, you should have a valid number on file. We should be able to call our county legislator. And she's like, well, he does have another job. And I said, well, okay, but he still needs to answer to his constituents. I reached out to Matthew Pasquale, and he never called me back. But all of a sudden, his name showed up in this letter. Yeah. Now, God only knows how many people were calling him or what his situation was, but just the fact that you could see some tangible things in writing, and like I said, the Endicott School District was, expressing the same concerns in written form. I think it was applying pressure to Mayor Jackson from a lot of different places. And I have to say that I felt right from February that she was very ill-equipped to deal with this kind of pressure. I did not feel that she was intellectually, emotionally up to this challenge. I felt that that's why she was just like here, this project's coming here, it's a done deal, and not really listening to people. It was just like, I'm going to do this, come hell or high water. This is what's going to happen because, the Empire State Development Funds, are back in this, and this is coming into our community. It's going to bring a lot of great jobs, and we need this, and we're a manufacturing community, so this is what we're going to do. It just really, like I said before, has led up to this moment of it's an unforgivable thing to have people in that kind of fear for so many months and really not listen, not care, act like you're completely disregarding them.
It was kind of a form of, I almost want to use the form terrorism, because the people here truly were afraid. I was afraid. I've got my own breathing issues. I caught a really super amazingly bad flu in February of 2019, which is a full year prior to when COVID supposedly first broke, right? So
yeah, you and I talked about this because I was sick 2 months before that with something. It was diagnosed as chronic bronchitis, but I was for the first time in my life on an inhaler. I had a steroid shot. I made a few trips to the walk-in. I was really, really sick all through the holidays of actually 2018. And I was really concerned. I'm like, gosh, the last time I was sick, it really knocked me out. I had a fever. Then you were sick within about, I think we determined that it was less than 90 days after I was sick. And so, you don't know, and here we are in the middle of a pandemic too. And when I say that, this is what the national rhetoric is, you're at this point where, when you get COVID, allegedly, you don't know what's going to happen, what with your breathing or, what is going on out there with this illness. And so all this fear about the pandemic combined with the incinerator, and it took a toll. I feel like I aged a couple of years last year because it was like I was trying my best to be at every protest. I think I managed to be at everyone except for one. I wasn't available for the new group that formed Mamas Against Sanjil. I missed that one, I believe. But I held a couple of my own ones at the municipal building and with you, Bill, and I spent a great amount of energy over the course of the year between, the incinerator and dealing with the effects of the pandemic, and it really, wiped us out quite a bit. And so, in the culmination of it, it basically comes down to this vote, right? To overturn this law that was made in order for SunGeel to come here back in May. This law is passed in order to allow, this kind of manufacturing. And so this law, in order to really deal with, finally answer the question is, are they going to be able to come here or not? That law had to be overturned, correct?
I wouldn't say it exactly like that. I wouldn't say that, because there might be other ways that could have canceled them as well. But the way that I would say it with regards to that zoning law is that in order to bring SunGeel here, they had to change the zoning. That's why they had to do that May 7th vote. But they did it in a real...
You had the community and the elected officials said earlier, what we're saying is Mayor Jackson could have, should have, would have, all that should have come forward and said, look, I have hundreds of constituents here that are against this project, and out of sheer moral responsibility, I am against this project at this point. I have to speak for my constituents. Maybe at some points I felt that it could be economically beneficial for us, but everybody's much more concerned about the environmental factors, and there's information about the environmental factors that I wasn't even aware that are now concerning the DEC, and we are no longer welcoming SunGeel into this community. And she did not do that. She didn't even come close to that.
I know. So, okay, so I think we've done a very good job of kind of laying out the framework for what we really came here to talk about tonight. And I take no pleasure in this, Diane. I really don't. But I believe this is just something that we have to. It's like, if you had an old TV set and it blew a tube, you just have to do maintenance on it, right? You just have to replace the bad one. And I feel like that this is like a mechanical thing that we have to do. We have to figure out a way. It's like, you realize that the person that's piloting the train is not really qualified to be in that position. And it's just...
Yes, and as we said, we knew this early on, but it was very clear that this was just not going to change even after the vote. But let's talk about the vote. Let's talk about the night of the meeting.
Let's talk. Yeah.
We had, over 100 people at a public hearing to rescind this law that had been put in place to allow SunGeel to come here. And we had basically the setup for this, and I am really, really shocked at what I saw. I've gone to a lot of public hearings in the city of Binghamton here, and I've just never seen anything like this before. So basically, when I tuned in, this is what I saw. I saw my mayor in apparently what appeared to be her kitchen, eating and appearing to drink wine from a wine glass and trying to conduct a meeting at the same time. And I was shocked at what I was seeing. And it was over a frequency of drinking from this wine glass that I could tell where her wine glass placement was, what interval she was drinking. And I started taking screenshots of it. And I'm like, you got to be friggin' kidding me. And the deputy mayor, Eileen Konechny, who had actually run on my ticket for trustee, she was up for re-election. She was there, and they were laughing and giggling and trying to conduct business. And at some point in the meeting, power was handed over to the village attorney.
Wait, what was that about? It's like so they were the attorney Bob McCurdick or McCurdick, I think is how it's pronounced. He had been, the mayor turned over. She didn't want to be involved. She did not want to chair that public hearing, so she asked the attorney to do it, and he did. And then when the public hearing was over, he wanted to turn it back to her, and she was nowhere to be found. She was gone. She dropped off. What?
Well, I think that this has to be a separate complaint in itself, because the first thing that should have happened is if Linda didn't feel like she could have handled this public hearing, she should have handed this over to the deputy mayor. And that did not happen. And instead, what we had is the village attorney running a meeting, which I have to think, honestly, is illegal.
I don't know what it was like. And I talked to, my buddy Craig Stevens was on the call, and he said the same thing. He said, Bill, I have attended hundreds of town board meetings, village meetings, every kind of, state legislators. He says, I've been to all kinds of different meetings. And that was some like weird shiznit. That was like some off the, that was unexplored, never seen before, anything like that. It's like.
Well, and honestly, at that point, let's say this, that the vote happened and that they, I believe, both abstained, correct?
They both, the vote was weird. It was like, it was like 4-0 for like 3-0-1. So like one voted. I don't really. I thought it was 2 abstentions, but the vote was recorded differently. I'm not sure why exactly, but.
Well, so they, basically like decide that they're not going to go again. They're not going to listen to the constituents yet once again. And literally during this whole time are drinking, eating, which at this point, now we know, she's like, well, I had meetings all day. I had to have dinner. Well, I don't know any time in my life where I've ever watched an official eat and drink while they're, at a meeting. Okay. Never. I know people that won't even drink a Coke on screen because they don't want to promote Coke. So she's literally just eating and drinking and laughing and giggling the whole time, and I was just shocked. I was appalled. I mean, I was thinking, this has got to be some joke. Like, I mean, this can't even be real. Like, this person has got to be so out of touch. Now, mind you, I do have to state, at the meeting prior to this, I questioned her mental health, because I'm like, I'm sorry, but something's going on here. This cannot be. She could not be mentally aware and keyed into us so much that she does not get the fact that her constituents don't want this project, and she just doesn't care. How can this be true?
So, Diane,
and of course, I was shut down.
Oh yeah. No, that was a right. It was, that was bold. It was, I was impressed. I'm not sure that I would have said that exactly, but I was like, wow. I think you expressed what a lot of people on the call were thinking, and didn't really. But on this in the meeting that just happened on Monday, there was a lot more of it. I think I heard a half a dozen people raise the same complaint. Let me play you a little clip. Let me play you just a little clip of somebody. What's her name? I cannot see her name here, but. Let me just play this little clip. It's just a couple of minutes, okay?
Yep.
Is there a way to impeach our mayor? I really feel that she is not in the best interest of our community. Is that a process, Bob, that can happen? Like, how does that happen to get rid of her before the end of her term? Because I really feel she is not appropriate for this position. And I am ashamed that I voted for her. And I wish I could take it back now, but I can't. But is there a process, Bob, that we can go through to hold her accountable for everything that she has put this village through since the very beginning of this? Is there a way to hold her accountable?
Okay, so I'm just going to stop it there because Bob didn't really answer the question. He says that's not my place to answer the question. He just kept on going with the meeting. But I mean, that was
And let
basically.
me speak to that for a second. You know, I have worked for attorneys for over 10 years, and my understanding is that, albeit that he's in a tough position, that he works for the village, that it's his job to advise the village officers on legal matters. It is not his position to run a meeting. And I do believe that some rules of decorum, Robert's Rules of Order, what have you, would allow somebody that was conducting a meeting to call people out on bad behavior. Okay, so what he was doing during the meeting was he was calling out constituents that were calling in, including myself, out what he called speaking out of line, out of some new decorum rule where we weren't allowed to speak out against the mayor. But yes, she was allowed to speak out against us, and she said that we were harassing her, and she said that we had a non-recycling agenda. She started out the meeting actually like tainting a whole group of students that were there by telling them that basically that we were just loony, that we must be the loons, we're harassing her, and that we cannot come off as being, you know, anti-business and non-recycling, and that, you know, it's really important that we, you know, all bind together on this. And I was, the whole drinking thing, thinking about a dozen kids watching this, those kind of things really, really hit me hard. And I'm like, I think I was the first one to mention, I'm a little bit appalled by the fact that there appears to be drinking going on here. And I think that that's really inappropriate and something should happen with that. And again, I was shut down by the village attorney and said that that was just completely out of line. And I said, it's not fair for you to just shut us down when we talk about things that are reasonable. Like, we don't expect our mayor to be eating and drinking during a meeting, but yet you let her talk badly about us. So we really had to fight a little bit, even during the course of this meeting, to get some kind of degree of professionalism going on here. And
I think that lots of people. I mean, Ted Warner definitely said it. Somebody else said it. I think. Oh, it was Pat Dorner said it too. That, you know, they really thanked Bob, and I sort of am in that same camp. I think that he was in a really tough position. That was a tough call to make, and he was trying to do the best that he possibly could. And so I hear what you're saying, and I understand. I just think that he was in a tough spot, you know.
You know, an attorney's under a different set of rules than even the elected officials. That attorney has to know what his place is too. And I believe that the attorney, as nice of a guy as he seems to be, should have, could have, would have known that he was not in the position to run a public hearing, that he should not be running that meeting. Now, it appeared again that Eileen Konechny was also drinking. Never once did Mayor Jackson suggest that she run the meeting. And then basically after he ran the meeting, at one point the meeting was supposed to be turned back over to Mayor Jackson, and Mayor Jackson could not be found.
AWOL.
And there was no connection either with Eileen Konechny. And I'm sure, again, the process would be to call these people and say, what the heck's going on? So I don't know what happened. I do want to know what happened, and I do think the village owes it to us to tell us exactly what happened to Mayor Jackson and what happened to Trustee Konechny at the end of that meeting. Because what ended up happening is a motion was made to put Nick Burlingame in charge of the remainder of the meeting. And as he has before, he conducted it very professionally. He did a really, really superb job at closing out that meeting. But, you know, you and I speaking, Bill, if you and I were representing the village and something happened to me at the end of the meeting, let's say something like some legitimate emergency, either health-wise or phone-wise or family-wise, you know that the very next day I would be on the phone with you, Bill, and I'd be like, gosh, I'm so sorry that happened. This is what happened and what have you. I called up Nick the next morning. When I say called him, I sent him a message and I said, did something happen? Because, somebody can fall, somebody can get hurt, somebody can have a heart attack, heaven forbid. And there was never any courtesy call to Nick, who ran the meeting, to say, hey, this is what happened, and that I'm sorry that happened, and thank you for running the meeting. And that's just bizarre.
But it's bizarre, but it's also in some ways kind of typical too, wouldn't you say? Of just the bizarre behavior.
Probably typical, but probably also illegal.
Okay, so here's what if we can, it's good to keep these videos kind of on the shorter side, and you and I both tend to talk a lot, and I think it was a great conversation we've had, but I really want to try to focus back if we can. I'm looking at the Facebook page. I got the Facebook page called up right now. It's got a picture of her drinking, and I went through the video, and I think I found like 5 instances and I labeled them like, bottoms up and chug-a-lug and things like that in the comments. And I put the time, so you can just click on the timestamp and it takes you to chug-a-lug, and you click it here and it takes you to bottoms up and big.
Yeah, and isn't there one at like 4/3/29 that where they talk about, isn't it too late to be drinking?
Yes, yep. So I'm looking at this tell me what this Facebook page is, and it's got a petition. What's the petition?
Well, let's talk about the fact that at this point that there is a committee, that there are active constituents that are working towards her removal. I will say at this point that I am part of this committee working towards her removal. And so the Facebook page was put together to work at that end. There is a public officers law, I believe it's section 36, that talks about the means at which you draft something similar to the process like an Article 78 petition, where you state the allegations that you believe, the illegalities that have been committed by somebody that's in public office, and you petition the state, in this case, the appellate court of the Supreme Court, I believe of the Third Department, and you appeal to them to say, we feel that this person has committed these acts that are, illegal, unethical, immoral, and we want her out of office. And you gather signatures and you present this to the Third Department. And at this point, we are gathering names and addresses and phone numbers of people that are supporting this. I think at this point we have over 200 people within 24 hours following the page. When I say that are actively engaged in the page. 55 official followers within 24 hours, but gathering names on this Google's document, and people are very, very concerned and don't want to see this continue, because what was very clear after the vote is, even in the 24 hours after the vote, is that she was not going to stop bad talking about her constituents and saying, showing basically a bunch of thin-skinnedness about saying that she was being harassed. And I think she's been on like 3 interviews since the meeting, bad-mouthing, the residents of Endicott. So she clearly, I don't believe, is interested in representing the village of Endicott at this point.
Wow. Yeah, that's it. I mean, you put it in very blunt terms, but I basically agree with you. She basically, I don't give a shit about you. I don't care about your concerns. I'm gonna make my own decisions, and I'm gonna do things my own way. And it didn't.
And I'm not going to sit and listen to you guys. I've been harassed enough. I can't deal with it, so I'm going to eat and drink, and that's just it. I can kid around and joke around and I can't handle this, basically saying I can't handle this. And I think it's very clear that she can't handle it. I believe in my heart that that's why she tried to hold on to Cheryl Chapman so much, is potentially even her assistant, is because she knew that on her own, she could not run the village, that she was not capable of it. So I've got to have my friend Cheryl Chapman over here, my right-hand man, so to speak, a woman. And that she now is kind of like, now she's kind of wrapping Eileen under her wing.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Eileen doesn't have the ethical fortitude either. Eileen just kind of goes whatever way the Mayor river is flowing.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have the morality to step forward and say, okay, this has gone on far enough. I am going to take a stand here and start to represent the interests of my constituents. And so we may be focusing right now in this conversation on the mayor, but I'm not going to erase the culpability or liability of Deputy Mayor Konechny in this either. But right now our focus is on the mayor because she does have a lot of power and prestige. She represents the village residents, period. She's employed by the village residents. And if we don't want to employ her anymore, we have to take action. And this is what action we've chosen to take.
And we are collecting, we're asking if you want, it's the address is tinyurl.com/remove Endicott mayor. It's really easy to remember. tinyurl.com/remove Endicott mayor. That's the petition. And just fill out your name and your address. And it's not public because we didn't want, to have, Mickey Mouse from, Duluth, on there or from Italy or something, it's just some foreign country like with the other petition that was out there. That's the problem with the public petition is, we're trying to get very high quality names, people that we vet, people that we know live in the village, and people that really are that they believe in what we are saying. We have just a simple thing, okay? So basically, if you look at Public Officers Law 36, and I want to say that I have to apologize, Diane, because I co-run this page with you so far, and somebody was saying where this thing. It was a subtle thing. It is the appellate division of the state superior court. Or the state Supreme Court. Sorry about that. The state Supreme Court. So I got that I jumped on somebody, this troll guy, and I actually blocked him. And it's okay that he was blocked because he was just generally trolling. And the guy was from, I forget where he's from. He's from, Shenango County or something. And he wasn't even.
Well, let's do it this way. The committee is not going to allow just general trolls to come on the page. Now, yes, maybe in this case, this person was right. There was some misunderstanding that happened. But let's say at this point that the committee that runs the page is not going to allow people to just come on that are from Timbuktu. This is specifically made for the village residents. It's specifically focused on getting her removed from office. And anybody that wants to come on there and debate issues and
it's not the place. It's not the place for that.
Try to cause a problem. That's just not going to be tolerated. So those comments will be deleted or hidden, and we're just going to focus on the village residents. So we also thought about this earlier: is that not everybody is like a Facebook person,
right?
And they may just want to make a simple phone call and let their concerns and have their name and address be taken, and that's fine. So we're working on a hotline that should be on the Facebook page and out there in the public within a 24-hour period, a hotline where people can call in and they can leave messages or be spoken to about their concerns. What we want to have happen here is everybody's had different communications with Linda. The mayor has talked to hundreds of people over the last 12 months, and they've all had different interactions with her, and they all have different concerns. They all have different incidences that have happened. Like, let's say, for example, like maybe they were blocked from the village email. Let's say, for example, I didn't have that happen to me, but somebody else did. We need to have all these things to put in this petition. And all these people that have these things happen over the last 12 months have to reach out to us to have that added.
Right, very good. Right. So we're building a list of people. Just if you like the page, that's going to help, because that makes that gives some kind of indication of how many people are on the same wavelength here. And there were half a dozen people just on the meeting the other night that were saying this. So like Diane is saying, the reason why we're not going to share your information with anybody, the only reason why we're collecting it is because we have to form, it's kind of like a lawsuit, but it's not really. It's a petition to the court. We're asking a judge to basically remove a public official for, let me just say this really quick. I have to get rid of you for 1 second on the screen so that I can blow this up. This is from Public Officers Law Section 36. It says that the reason why you might want to remove somebody from office is for misconduct, maladministration, malfeasance, or malversation. Have you ever heard of that word before? Malversation?
Actually, no.
I had to look it up myself, and they all mean something, somewhat similar, but basically, one of the reasons why we're collecting these names from people is so that, I need to get a drink of water, is so that we can collect your stories. Like Diane said, everybody has a different story. Everybody has been affected by this mayor in different ways. And maybe you just don't like the way she, the disrespect that she had for the people that elected her, that put her in office for the entire last year. She shut us out of public conversation. She closed down, the hearing of the visitors at meetings. It was just like you had to pre-register. You had to tell them what your topics were ahead of time. All kinds of restrictions on public participation. And it was just like when you finally did get through, you felt like that, she's playing footsie with her friend or something, with her fingers in her ears going, yum, 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 yada, 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 yada. She's not, he's like, I can't hear you kind of stuff. She's not really tuned in. She's not really listening. So we need to collect these stories, how we want you to basically, what we're probably going to have. See if you agree with this, Diane. We're just riffing this. We're brainstorming as we go here. And I know you have a lot of legal experience, Diane. So my idea is that we need to have like petitioners or complainants or complainants that actually put their name on this it's called a Public Officers Law Section 36 petition to the court. Okay. And so I think that, if we just get one, it just takes one person. All it takes is one person. But if we can put a dozen names on there and give a dozen affidavits, this is what I was going to ask you. I just think that people need to write their story in an affidavit, get it notarized, and we'll stuff it into the record, and we'll add you as a petitioner. So if we could get a dozen.
If I just chose to address the drinking issue at the final meeting, where the vote happened during the public hearing, or just the way she conducted that final meeting, then I would draft an affidavit at home. I would state what happened and how I believe that this is illegal. And by the way, for those people that haven't done this before, I worked for attorneys, in Broome County for over a decade. We have a committee of people that can help you with this. Okay. So we can help draft some affidavits, but ultimately that person has to be willing to put their signature on it. It should be, I believe, for an affidavit anyway, it should be notarized unless it's just a plain declaration. But then these would be added as basically exhibits to this petition, and to be heard in front of a judge. Now, mind you, I've never been involved in this particular section of laws proceedings. I've been involved in many proceedings, is, doing court paperwork for attorneys, and actually for myself, unfortunately, for custody and child support matters. But that being said, I have never been personally involved in this type of proceeding. But I'll tell you right now, my name will be on that petition,
Mine
and
too.
we will take this to the appellate division of the Supreme Court, and we'll let a judge decide. Now, before that happens, I just want to say this before we get off air, Bill, because I know you're probably looking to wrap it up. But I do believe that additional pressure needs to be put on the Republican Party, because they backed Linda getting into this seat. And I think that if they examine the course of the last 12 months, that they've got to see that she's not fit to be in this position.
Not fit. That's just a fact.
Yeah. So between the Republicans that are representing the Endicott area and the Republican leadership for Broome County, I am going to state on record right now that they really need to pay attention to what's going on. And if they knew what was good for them, they would take one of these very intelligent gentlemen, such as Ted Warner and Nick Burlingame, and they would put one of them in charge of the village until the constituents can actually hold a special election.
Special election, yes. Yep, very good.
I believe that the Republicans should take responsibility for the fact that the leadership is inadequate, is not listening to the constituents, is not potentially not mentally stable enough, emotionally stable enough to handle it and take charge of this situation. I believe that if I were in Linda's position, and I knew that I don't believe I would ever be in Linda's position. I've run committees before, and I've run clubs before, and I've never taken on a position that I felt that I couldn't handle. But if I was in that position, I believe that I have enough honor that I would do the right thing and step down. Now, I remember being in a position once when I was working for the Girl Scouts where that position required me to be on call 24/7, and at that point I was a single parent, and I knew that I could not meet those obligations. And so I put my resignation on the table and said, look, I am not able to be on call 24/7 as a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the ethical thing to do when you find yourself in a position where you cannot do the job for which you've been hired, elected, what have you, is to resign. And that would be the honorable thing, but I'm not quite sure that she's going to be able to do that. And so minus that, we have the Republican leadership that could take some responsibility, sit down with Linda, talk to her, and make this happen. Or we have a petition that can go in front of the appellate court. And I believe that would be the most embarrassing thing to have happen to
right. Wouldn't she, if you knew this was coming, wouldn't you just resign? Well, it was like the vote on Monday. If you knew you were going to lose the vote, that's what, I think it was Ted Warner that said, oh no, it was Paul Connett, I think, that said, Linda, all you have to do, we will forgive you for the entire past year if all you do is vote yes on this new law. And she couldn't do it.
Right. She couldn't even open up the meeting and say, look, I've spent a year listening to all of you, and it's come down to this, and I really should have listened to you sooner, but I am listening, and this is what I'm going to do. She's just not, again, her focus is not on the constituents, and this is why I feel it's going to be really hard for her to make this decision, but, let's try to make it easy on her. Ted Warner, if you're listening now or you listen to this in the morning, Ted, you ran along with Linda. Sit down with Linda and talk to her, or call the Republican leadership and let them know what's going on if they don't already know, and tell them that this has to happen. She needs to step down. This is not an appropriate position for her. And Ted, what's your plan for the village of Endicott?
I think that's exactly right, and I really think the Republican leadership is already primed for it. At least, I just want to reflect on the Fred Akshar letter, because one of the reasons why I thought that was such a gutsy move was he was basically writing a letter to Linda a member of his own party, and he's saying, hey, I'm hearing a lot of complaints from people. Maybe you should listen to your constituents. That's coming from a major dude in her own party, like a major state player. He's one of the top Republicans in the state, So
yeah, and I have not ever had an occasion to call him, but I'm thinking about doing that exact thing tomorrow myself and saying, look at, because I'm one of his constituents also. I'm in his district. So, we all have the ability to call our elected officials and put pressure on them. And so, yes, that's another venue here. There's the petition. There's these meetings that we will be having, gatherings for the committee, gatherings as we start to work on these affidavits and declarations. And you can make a phone call, and you can call up your elected officials that represent you here in Endicott, Town of Union, what have you, and put the pressure on and say, look, this is what we want to see happen, and how can you help us? And just reach out and spread these tentacles wide.
This is nothing personal, Linda Jackson. I care about you as a human being. I hope that you are happy and well and safe, and I hope that you have joy in your life. But I also this is a dispassionate decision. I don't bear you any ill will or there's no grudge involved here. There's no animosity. I have no animosity for you as a human being. I care about you as I care about anybody. This is just a simple thing that, I do not believe that you are capable of doing this job. You obviously have some personal problems in your life, and I'm sorry about that, and hope that you get the help that you need. And I'll even try to help with that if I can. But, this is just something that we have to do. And I would ask you, Linda Jackson, considering that this is coming, you can cost the state even more money. How much, somebody asked the question on Monday, how much money have we spent on Sunjeel? And there's questions that we haven't even talked about yet, like the clearing of that drainage ditch up on Sky Island Drive. I have some serious questions about that. Where did the money come from that? And anyway, so.
Well, Bill, God bless you. You couldn't have said that better. Linda and I during the campaign got along very well. She was very kind to me. She was always very respectful. So I have this personal concept of nobody's all bad, and everybody's got their own personal things going on, and we don't know what goes on behind closed doors privately with her. I don't hate Linda Jackson. I do just feel that she is not keyed into her constituents. I do feel that the last year is indicative of the fact that she is not right for this village. And but I don't want to see any harm come to her. I was concerned when they dropped off the meeting that something had happened. And that's why I called Nick the next morning to inquire about her. So, no, I hope that, I was thinking about them driving home, or Eileen having to drive home, and whether or not they made it home safe. All these thoughts were in my head. So, some people look at something like this and say, well, these folks are just pushing negativism. No. There is nothing that Bill and I have done that hasn't always been thinking about the best interest of the village. This petition, I believe, is in the best interest of the village, or I would not be 110% on board.
Very well said, Diane. So there's nothing in the chat going on. Let's try to wrap this up. So I'm just going to turn it over to you if you got any final words, and then we'll close the show out.
Again, I just want to let the residents know you don't have to feel defeated by this kind of behavior. You don't have to feel defeated by what has been said on the news, even after the vote. Empower yourselves once again, that's pulled together to do what's right for the village and to make this happen.
Okay, Diane, you're a true warrior. I appreciate your friendship so much, and also your powerful voice and your just your firmness. And I mean, you just seem to have, you're a person of integrity, personal integrity. You don't always play the party line. You don't do as you're told. You think for yourself, and you take a moral position on things. That you take certain positions which are moral in basis and which are they're not negotiable. There's a certain line that's inviolable, and you stand that line. And I really appreciate you, and I admire your strength and your courage. So apparently you just dropped. So anyway, thank you, Diane, and we will talk to you later at the next edition of the Bill Huston podcast. So please subscribe to the Bill Huston podcast on YouTube, and be sure to donate if you can to support my work. Thank you. Over and out.
Be sure to hit the like button, friends. Thumbs up this video and share it out, please. And don't forget to subscribe to the Bill Huston podcast on YouTube. Click on the bell and select all notifications. And please donate if you can to support my work. Donations in any amount are greatly appreciated.